Hi again guys, I know it's been a while. I think in my last video I addressed why, but the long story short is I was a bit of an idiot. I thought my channel wasn't getting many views and much traction. However, that wasn't actually the case. The reason behind that is just because I can't read properly and I don't know how numbers work, but there was a really nice comment from a guy called Jacob or something like that a few videos back, which I saw, and that inspired me to start up again. So here we are. Today is the video which I promised a while ago, or last video, sorry, and that is some ideas I have for the game, right? Because I think if you guys have been playing as long as I have, like pretty much since launch, you might find that the game is getting a bit stale now, and so I kind of wanted to talk about like different ideas about how we could like improve the game or make it more dynamic and interesting, right? This is just going to be a quick one. I think I'm going to try and get something recorded for the start of next week. Ideally, that's the plan. We'll see how that goes, but we'll try and pump out a bit more of a schedule than last time. Anyways, so let's have a look at what I've come up with. So there's a couple of general content ideas, and I think one of them is to make like the champion trial content more regular. And it's kind of playing around with the card thing, the card mechanic and the buffs and stuff which come with that, and essentially deliberately making one of the modes, like club contest or even like a champion trial type mode, extremely difficult, but it requires more team play and team building with the card specifically. You know, unfortunately with Haikyuu, it's quite a broad game with the buffs being really generic, like it's like a power buff, or like there's two types of buff. Like defensive buff and two types of power, but like offensive buff, and then there's the crit buff for both defensive and offensive. So it's really limited. So I think using the card mechanic could basically create more strategy in the game and add a lot more dynamism to the game. And you can also change cards, buff cards, nerf them, and change the way they work a lot more, which gives a more interesting and dynamic experience for the player if the devs actually want to do that. Another one which I had, let's have a look at quickly, basically like coming up with more content to grind as well. So one of the ideas was like a character version of extreme training where you have a specific character. So in this case I used the example of Daichi, and you have 100 floors of Daichi, and each time you clear say 50 floors, or like, yeah, so you clear half the floors, you get one dupe. Clear 100 floors, you get another dupe. And this kind of encourages you to, one, level up Daichi so that you can use Daichi and then dupe him, and you're rewarded for specializing in Daichi because you get more dupes for him. Then also, it basically encourages you to play him. So, for example, we have our current coaching system, right, where you have to use specific players from teams to get the coaching, like leveled up. I propose we do the same thing with players. And all you've got to do is you've got to build teams based on their bonds. So for the first 20 floors, it could literally just be Daichi. The 31st to 40th floor, it could be Sugawara and Asahi, right? Like, because these are like his main bond. And then 40 to 60, it could be a more niche bond. It could be with Enoshita as well. So you've got to use Suga, Asahi, Enoshita, and Daichi. And then 80 and above, it could be with Kuro, right? Because they also have a bond with Kuro. And the idea is that it gets more difficult based on pure difficulty, but you can also scale it with the fact that you may be having to use suboptimal characters as well, like Enoshita, who is an SR character. Little things like that, right? And I think you can basically make it so that even if you don't lock it to the specific character, because that's not particularly fun, you could maybe have it so, alright, you do the Daichi game mode without Daichi, but like Daichi's ult has a 2 net crossing cooldown and a 200% extra receive stat, I think was what I came up with as an example. Obviously I'm not a dev, I don't balance it, but I think that could be a really good way of, if you don't want to like force a person to play certain characters, that could also be a way of doing it, right? Where you get buffs, you make the content incredibly hard, but you get buffs depending on certain specific skills from characters, which encourages you to use the bond characters of those people. That's like another solution, right? Other features which get you playing longer, live PvP games, We literally have PvP built in with the like card matching game mode and other game modes, right? So I think it's definitely doable. It's just having PvP for the actual game itself would be a really nice implementation. Friendly matches with your friends feels really obvious once again. Like, you should be able to, this is an idea which my friend came up with, not me, so I'm just gonna shout out them here. But you should be able to go on to, say, the court on in your base, because you can buy a like outside court area. You should be able to click on that in someone else's base and basically challenge their team to a match. Because I think that'd be fun. Like, who wouldn't want to play and try and counter their like friend's team at some point? Another one, which is really obvious, once again, friend came up with this one, is a clan war. The fact that we don't have like a clan war system feels really counterintuitive, because it's one of the main reasons you come back to any game, right? Because you want to represent your clan and you want your clan to be the best in the game and like, yes, we have that, but realistically, to be the best clan in the game at the minute, you just need 50 active players which have played long enough that their resources are at a point where they've got everything they need, so they can just give away fragments and that's it. Like, it's not difficult. It's not difficult to be the best club in the game as long as you've got the 50 people which want to play, or the 100 people. Sorry, 100 people. So I think clan wars would be an interesting way to spice things up a little bit there. And personally, probably the last one out of my like fun ideas is the emotes. I don't know why. I really like the emotes when, like, especially in the early characters where you can see they've got like a frustration emote, they've got a happy emote, etc. I think it would be really nice to see more emotes for characters so that when you're playing the game, because unfortunately I do play at 1.2 or manual because I run a block team, right? So I need a perfect serve. It's nice to see the reactions. This is just a little bit of variety in the game, which makes, you know, your brain go, ooh, you know what I mean? It's really silly, but like, that's something I personally like. Finally, I've got a couple of really big ideas which I wanted to give a lot more time, so I'm going to talk about them now. So the first one is nothing crazy, it's just a combo like we do right now, like a deployment bond. However, instead of it being a one-time thing, it's on a cooldown. I've got loads of examples for these, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to whistle off a few ideas just to kind of get things going. But I really do think that this would add a lot of interesting dynamics to the game, and it would also make pairing up certain characters more important. And you could even do some really odd ones as well if you really wanted to. But like, it could basically create synergies which makes these characters play together not necessarily vital, but extremely useful, so that you're more encouraged to think very intentionally about how you build your teams. Because at the minute, you're kind of like, well, I want to run a power team, and I need someone which gives awareness, so that's Oikawa or Akashi, and then I need characters which produce their own strength, or get their strength for someone else, you know what I mean? So it's like, it's really simple. So like, by doing this, you could like make things really intentional about how you set things up. Anyways, I'm waffling too much. Rapid fire round on my different ideas. So, first one, a Fearless Spike, 12 net cost and cooldown. It's kind of like the Noya Jazz SR2. Then Noya, every 12 net crossings, can produce a save, which basically guarantees that you'll not lose a point off that. That will work very similar to Kuro's block, where it could be a situation where, you know, you could still end up having a block touch and then the receiver's bad or normal, and then you have a bad set and you still lose the point. So you could still get blocked the second time, but just off the bat, it gives you a chance to recycle the ball again. Alright, next one, a Gutsy set. This is basically where if for whatever reason their receive is not perfect, if Kenma is set into Yamamoto, it will come perfect, and not only that, it will then become critical for both people. That, or you could have a multiplier on the hit by like, I don't know, 20%, 50%, something like that, right? Because it's on a 12 net crossing cooldown, a lot of these are, like, it really depends on how you want to do it. I think it's a nice way to basically body Nekoma and its spirit. And you could just basically have it so that it converts these sets more consistently. Right, Perfect Connection V2. So this is the Oikawa Iwazumi bond. I personally think that I look at the current SP Iwazumi and SP Oikawa bond, and I'm like, why is this not on a cooldown? It just feels like it should be on a cooldown. Like, it's just an enhanced power hit. So when Oikawa and Iwazumi are played together, then you just have Iwazumi have a slightly stronger hit than usual. I'm not saying that it needs to be anything crazy, but basically it just means that he becomes a viable hitter as well as a receiver because Oikawa's on the court. That's all. Next would be Hind, and this is off of the classic moment in season 4 of Haikyuu, and if for whatever reason Suki is blocking and it doesn't result in a perfect block and Hinata is backcourt, then it will increase Hinata's receive by 300% for 1 net crossing. Basically, it just means that, like in the show, when Suna was cornered, it gives you an opportunity that like Hinata will potentially pick up a ball which he wouldn't otherwise because he's got an enhanced set, receive every now and again. Trust. When Kageyama sets to Tanaka, he will produce a powerful line shot at 350% of his multiplier, and if this scores, gain 30 morale. Obviously I'm not dev, I feel like that's a little bit overtuned in general, especially if we're running like the SP version of Tanaka, but in general, it encourages you to potentially use that interesting combo, right? Because then you can have a morale output again through Tanaka and Kageyama. Then if this is the SSR versions as well, you could then implement, say, Noya in there, and then you get Kyoko Knight's Bond, and then so these compound into a wave. Actually, you could potentially run these 3 as a morale output through Tanaka. And then you could potentially run Bokuto as an example, or Akashi as a second setter, all these different things, right? Just as a playing with ideas, it changes the way you could potentially play the game. So those are the examples of the cooldown based ones. Now I really wanted to touch on quickly the alternate forms idea I have. So this is completely interesting new territory, which I don't think the devs would ever touch because it's really hard to balance and plan out, but it would add some really interesting dynamics to the game. So by default, the twins, for instance, are very unfocused, right? That's canonically what they are. They mess about, get found out, they do all sorts. They're not very focused. But when Kita's on the court, that tends to sharpen them, right? They then feel chill down their spine, then they're focused. So my premise is that this is a deployment bond between Kita and the twins, where if Kita's on the court, they can now produce awareness and reflex, but at the cost of a bit of their quick attack stats and their set stats. So I've got a few more ideas of this. So for example, another good one could be the Super Ace, which I think is like around Shiratorizawa. So if Ushijima is playing on a Shiratorizawa based team, it would reduce the cooldown of Ushijima's hit by 2 net crossings, but it would also mean that it would reduce everyone else's awareness by, say, 20%, right? The trade-off for that as well, though, is that if Ushijima scores, you gain 15 morale. And the idea around this is that, like, this is particularly around like the UR version, not the SP version, but the idea around this is that you're running a Shiratorizawa team, which is based on awareness. You get rid of that awareness aspect, but you can put everything through Ushijima, and if Ushijima is scoring still, then you can run Crazy Morale. You can generate Crazy Morale, which actually synergizes with Goshiki's SR4, where he can spam his ultimate with the T-Morale Awakening, right? So there's like little bits of synergy where it's like, alright, you're trading off awareness, but you're gaining morale, which then enables Goshiki. So could it be worth it? You know, it's different things to look at. So another example is what I called New Guy on the Block. It's kind of a really crappy pun, which I made, and basically is that when Kogunigawa is in a block, it actually increases the stamina. However, it also, so when Kogunigawa is in the block, it actually increases the stamina consumption of that block. However, it also increases the power of that block each time. So as long as Kogunigawa is participating in that block and jumping, not necessarily using a skill, but just in that block, and someone else is using a skill, it increases the power of that block, but at the cost of, say, an extra 5 stamina. So once again, big trade-off where it's like, would you want that extra block power? potentially, but do you have the stamina to recover to make up for that? All different things to consider, but I think that's like a really interesting one. It kind of plays on the fact that when Kagunigawa is blocking and swing blocking into the rest of the team, actually a lot of the time he is bumping into them, so it's taking a lot of strength to maintain that core, as you see with Futakuchi actually falling on the floor in the anime, right? These are all little things which I'm trying to like think of with the show as well, so it's like bringing them all into it. And I think finally, one which obviously I'm not super keen on, but it kind of once again presents that idea, is stability, which is Daichi and Karasuno, right? So Karasuno is normally an attack-based team, and in general it bases everything on attack stats, right? Quick attack, awareness, that kind of jazz. What if when Daichi is on the court, he provides stability for the team, he provides a system, a defensive system, because that's kind of what he does in the show, right? When you have Daichi in the back with Asahi, Sumi, I'm craving a drink, then that's when you can potentially create a system where instead of awareness, you're actually subtracting some of that for reflex. So I think the numbers I came up with was at the start of each rally, convert 50% of everyone's awareness stat into reflex for the backcourt. So I guess a good example of this would be, say if the entire team's awareness was a total of, give or take, 300%. That's the entire team's awareness. Convert 50% of that, so 150, into the backcourt's reflex. So now the backcourt has 50% reflex each, just gained off the spot. I think that's really cool. I think that would be a really cool system, personally. Maybe you could do something off a serve receive instead, because that's obviously something which Daichi is particularly good at as well. You see that in the show. Not too sure, but in general you get the idea. I think overall though, when we're looking at this game, I love this game. I think it's really fun. However, it is a bit stale at times, and I do think there needs to be more intentionality in the team building, dynamicism in the game, and I think that's what needs to happen, right? I think the player cards thing from the Champions Round needs to be further implemented. I think there needs to be more stuff to do, be that with player extreme challenges like I talked about specific players, or the idea around, you know, having the specific team bond things where it's like if a certain player is on a team with a team bond, it completely changes the way those players play. That could be really interesting. And then once again, just having like active cooldowns on deployment bonds instead of one-time gimmicks, because yeah, cool, the twin spike of like 300% or whatever is like really cool the first time, and then it's like really cool the first few times you use it even, but then it's like, wouldn't it just be cooler if you could have like an enhanced spike regularly, or, you know, a general stat buff? And I know with the twins you do get a specific stat buff, but I do just can't help but think I'd rather have an active cooldown which changes the way the character plays a little bit, because once again that adds more dynamicism to the game, but it also adds more intentionality to the building, which is probably what will make a more interesting game in the long run. More choice is never a bad thing. I think the fact that you can pretty much run any characters together and more or less make a team, especially with the SPs having 20 million tags these days, is a cool thing. But I do think it would be really cool if you had to be really intentional about how you built the optimal team. And I think the best example of that is actually going to be the new best quick team, which I will be talking about in the next video, right? I think we can all guess what it is. I will be talking about it. I'll be talking about a few of the other options, so stay tuned for that one, alright? Anyways, thank you for watching, guys. I'm back. I'm going to try and be back. I might even do a few shorts as well. You know, I saw Red Panda do a couple. I'm really annoyed because I actually thought of that idea and didn't implement it, so a bit annoyed at myself, but hey ho. Yeah, fingers crossed. I'll see you guys in the next one, yeah? In a bit.